of people don't know what imposter syndrome is. It's that feeling of when you're in a room and you feel like you don't belong. You feel like you're not qualified enough to be there. It could be, in the classroom, or it could be in the workplace when you're in front of a client and you're, speaking on a one-to-one basis with them and they're asking you questions and you're just thinking, I don't know what I'm talking about. And it happens to everyone, and it happens to women so much. To me, failure is something that is necessary to be experienced when you're when you have a goal and you're pursuing something. It's a stepping stone towards that. And I don't think it's very common for people to kind of start working towards something and achieve success straight away. And also, we all put different definitions of success in our minds. It could be monetary success, it could be happiness, it could be pleasing other people, it could be pleasing our parents. And I think for me, it's just success is when I feel like I've accomplished something, or that I've been able to help someone through something that I've done, or that I've grown from an experience. And I think along that way, you will always experience various types of failures. I mean, we fail every single day. And we need to learn to become okay with that, because it's not the end of the world, basically. You have to just keep pushing through that and using it as a means to learn and to grow from that. So that's kind of my definition. And my experience with failure actually started when I was very young, when I was in school. And I was always told that getting good grades meant that you are a success, and that not being good in your studies, not getting straight A's meant that you're a failure to yourself and to your parents, and especially to your immigrant parents who've worked so hard to come out of their own difficult situations, out of poverty, whatever it is, having moved country, having made something of themselves, and then expecting you to, they almost say the least you could do is just do well in school if we're paying so much and we've worked so hard to put you through this education system. And it puts a lot of pressure on first generation immigrant kids, because we were kind of okay, oh no, I need to be doing really well in subjects that don't come naturally to me, or that I'm not enjoying as much. And I always thought that was the definition of success was getting good grades. And so I was a straight A student my whole life. I worked hard, I did my homework, I was the nerd of the class. I was always slightly awkward, slightly introverted, but at home, it was not even, well done for getting good grades. It was yeah, that's expected of you. And I think that experience made me almost judge other people who didn't do as well. And obviously I've come a really long way from that, to understand that that is what I was being told as a kid, and it's not the truth. It's just an opinion, or it's just an artifact that's created by our society and the situations that our parents or our families are in when they move from India to the West. And yeah, so that's kind of where I was when I was growing up. And I then experienced failure firsthand at university. So I had many moments where I was just I shouldn't even be here. Why am I here? And going from a straight A student, I started failing my exams a lot. I was not doing well in university because I wasn't enjoying it. I was in the wrong place. And I think I just, striving for an engineering degree as someone who inherently was a creative, I was always more creatively inclined. So go into maths and go into physics, which I hated. And I just did it because I was I need to get into engineering. I need to have a good job. This is what society tells me. I need to make my parents proud. I need to make my extended family proud, who don't even see me day to day, right? And why am I living for other people's expectations? So I think our society is very, very strongly focused on caring about what other people think. And I think for us, failure sort of is such a taboo because of that. We're scared of admitting that we're not good at something, or we're scared to admit that we're in the wrong place, or we're not doing well. Just because you do really well in school doesn't mean you're going to continue doing so. And so for me, that was the first like slap on my face. It was like, no, that is not like what real life is. You're not always going to be kind of growing and like working hard and things are going to work out your way. Because truth be told, sometimes you work really hard towards something and it still doesn't work out because it's not meant to be, right? And you just have to keep going and like try different things because maybe you're pursuing the wrong thing. And so at the time I was like, no, I'm not going to quit. To put it bluntly, I think that our society places a lot of importance on grades, and it's because they care about the outward appearance of things. And being able to brag about your kids' grades is something that, I mean, parents have been doing for generations. They've been comparing their kids to like their friends' kids and being like, oh, but my son, my daughter did this and like got an A in this. And it's just like, it's like such a talking topic in like social events. And I think an unnecessary amount of pressure and importance is placed on that when the education system in itself is quite flawed in the way that they teach kids, because they put hundreds of kids in the same room learning at the same pace when everybody has a different pace of learning. So I think that it can be very scarring for kids and for their mental health, and it deteriorates without them even realizing because they're constantly striving for this thing that they think is success. But if they're just not well equipped enough to actually reach that point, then they will set themselves for failure, and they will fail. Because if you're putting the definition of failure as that, then you are definitely going to fail. So for a really long time, I did let that idea of, oh my gosh, I'm failing, to really consume me. And what I learned from that, I think especially from my university experience, I learned that like you can keep pushing forward, and you can make changes in your life. And I think what I was doing at that time, actually experiencing those failures, was making me unlearn my values that I'd learned as a kid of this is what success is and this is what failure is, and you're a shame to the family if you're a failure. And I mean, I've not even experienced like the most extreme of cases. I've heard from other people the kind of things that they've had to deal with, you know, in terms of grades and expectations from families. But I think that fast forwarding a little bit to when I was applying for jobs, for example, I got rejected from 48 places and I applied to 50. I either got rejected, either did the interview and didn't get it, or I just didn't hear back from them. And what I realized from that was I just needed one place to accept me so I could start, right? So those failures were not saying that, oh, you failed in life. It was just like, okay, next one, right? I've grown from this. What have I learned from this, right? Let me apply that to the next one. And eventually you're kind of climbing that ladder, and then eventually you get to the end where you've gathered enough experience to suddenly like hit that jackpot. You know, one day someone will employ you. So it's a, you know, real life example for me, but it can apply to anything. I mean, as a dancer, I fail every day. So I'd go into a class and I fail to remember the routine. I fail to execute it, but I keep going because you're in that space where you're learning, and failure is not failure. It's just growth. So yeah, that's it's a stepping stone to success. It's not the end of your life. And I think I've gone through like a really, really tough time mentally from kind of that unlearning process at uni, where I didn't like my course and I was bad at it, and I was just like, should I just leave? Should I give up? And then there were so many pressures of like, well, what are people going to say? Like, you know, I can't just go back home. Like, people are going to be like, she probably partied too hard, or you know, she probably drank too much. And it's just like, it's the perception is just all over the place, and it's nothing to do with the reality. So I think that process was so gut-wrenching. It was like pulling out something that was so deep inside me, that was like, this is what failure is, and you're failing, and your life is over, or whatever, to being like, no, I no longer believe in that, because like, it's not true. For me anyway, it's not true. And I'm so much happier for it, because since then, that wasn't even the worst. Like, when I was applying for jobs, it was a lot worse, because you're dealing with like daily rejections, but you're getting stronger from that. And I don't think that feeling upset by it is a bad thing, but you have to kind of reset and just like get back up from that experience and be like, I'm not going to stop, because like life's too short to kind of just give up on things, and you just have to keep going. If you really believe in something, it's just finding that thing that you want to work towards, and you'll face daily rejections in that, but you just have to keep trying. I think it comes down to a lack of communication, and you have to build that over time. Like, I've probably reached a point with my family, or my immediate family, so my mum and dad, where I have spent years like trying to break through that generation gap. And I think it comes from both sides. So they have to be willing to break that barrier as well as yourself. And you both have to be working towards it. You'll never get to the same point where you're like both exactly in agreement of each other, but you can keep working at bridging that gap as much as possible. So for me, it comes down to communication. It comes down to talking about your feelings. But I'm fortunate that I guess my family is able to understand my struggles. Having moved from India, they knew that they had to change their mentality. Things were no longer the way that they were back in India, 30 years ago for them. We've all moved forward. We now live in a digital age where things happen so fast, and everyone kind of is just trying to adapt to that. So fortunately, my parents have reached a point where like they are willing to make that connection with me and try and understand where I'm coming from. And I understand that not everyone has understanding families like that. So it's really about like kind of gauging how much you can get through to them. But I still firmly believe that everyone can, to an extent, get through to their parents. They just have to give them a chance. Maybe sometimes we just don't try, and we don't communicate enough, and we don't talk about our feelings because we think that we automatically assume what they're going to say back to us. But I think that they're changing with the times too, and they're probably not the same people they were when we were teenagers, for example. They've seen a lot of things happen around them as well that have made them think differently about the world. And so we definitely need to keep working on that.
If I was Fear, and what would you say to Fear?
I'd say you're an yeah. I'd say that like you're most welcome to be around, because I think you're necessary. But I shouldn't let you stop me from doing anything. Like I can have you standing there on the side, just being present, because I think to a certain extent being nervous and being fearful sometimes is a good thing. It makes you value things. In our culture, we are so used to like this idea of living in big families and like being really close to our relatives, and like South Asian families are so rich in just like numbers, right? And I think when that happens, naturally there is a bit of pressure to kind of be able to answer to people that you're interacting with. And because people are so intertwined in their daily lives, and it's not just like, Christmas time where people get together. Like often, I mean, it's different now, and it's different from immigrant families, I think. But even with immigrant families, like they have their societies, they have the little cliques that they form because they are looking for comfort, away from home. And so what happens is that when they meet each other regularly, they'll just naturally like talk about, how their kids are doing. They have nothing better really to do a lot of the time. And a lot of it, I think, is kind of women are guilty of doing that, of like gossiping a lot and getting together in their groups of females and just like talking about everyone and everything, because often a lot of them don't work, and a lot of them kind of don't have much going on in their own lives, and so unfortunately they will kind of focus on other people. That's just my kind of one lens to it. I'm sure that there are other reasons why, but I think that the whole kind of premise around this idea of trying to please other people is because we are taught to respect our families, and especially our elders. And our elders have their separate values, right? And so they try and bring us up based on their own values. And so when that happens, we're constantly trying to like match up to their values, which might not match to our own. And we're always pressured to kind of strive for excellence. There is one more aspect to it. I think as immigrants, our parents have had to work twice as hard for everything. Whether it's studies, whether it's learning the new language of the country they're in, or whether it's about just being good at the job. often people of color have not had the same opportunities as people who aren't, and they've had to work twice as hard, and so they expect the same from their kids. So they expect their kids to be excelling because they feel like their kids won't have the same opportunities if they don't. So I think that is also a big driver for it. A lot of people don't know what imposter syndrome is. It's that feeling of when you're in a room and you feel like you don't belong. You feel like you're not qualified enough to be there. It could be, in the classroom, or it could be in the workplace when you're in front of a client and you're, speaking on a one-to-one basis with them and they're asking you questions and you're just thinking, I don't know what I'm talking about. And it happens to everyone, and it happens to women so much. Really, I think as a woman of color, it just comes from what we're taught, again, as kids. Females are taught to look pretty, sit pretty, play with dolls, and everything's just like really pristine and perfect, and that's how we're expected to conduct our lives. Whereas boys are expected to play in the mud, get dirty, just experiment and fail and fall and get up and have scraped knees, and it's just different. I mean, I'm not a kid anymore, so I don't know what it's like, but I know that when I was younger, that was the case. And so, again, it's those values we place in ourselves when we're younger, especially as females, to just always strive for 110% knowledge and perfection and qualification. So if I was to apply for a job, and if I go on LinkedIn and I look at all of the skills that I need, I'll try and make sure that I fit the bill for all of those skills. Whereas typically, I mean, I'm generalizing, but a lot of males will look at that and think, oh yeah, I cover most of that, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna negotiate a really high salary too. Women they don't do that. They don't believe in themselves often. And that is the imposter syndrome. It's when you don't believe in yourself and you think that, oh my gosh, someone's gonna find out that I've been in this job for so long and I shouldn't really be here because I don't know anything. I don't think our communities even know what imposter syndrome is. They feel it, but they don't acknowledge it often. I just think that there is this attitude of we just have to keep going, we just have to keep pushing and keep striving for excellence, and sometimes there's just not enough space to talk about the little things, the little insecurities that we face, whether it's at work, whether it's in our relationships, whether it's with our friends or our families. There's just not enough conversation about it. I've not heard enough South Asians talking about imposter syndrome. And in fact, I didn't even know that it was a term until I read Sheryl Sandberg's book. And I was just so moved by it because someone so high up in such a big company talking about how she gets scared going into meetings. She gets scared to sit at the table. She gets scared to lean into the conversations and into the work because she just doesn't feel like she belongs there. And even having gone through Harvard and everything, I was just very impressed by how candidly she was able to speak about that. And I definitely would love to open up more about my imposter syndrome and how I go through that, because there are so many young females, I'm sure, who are kind of looking for that kind of guidance on how should I deal with this? How should I, apply for an investment banking job when I'll be the only female in the firm or on the floor, and I won't know. I'll be the youngest one and I won't know what to do, and there'll be all these males running around and in their lad culture. So from the perspective of female, I think it definitely applies a lot to me, but I'm sure that it applies to everybody in different aspects of their life.